and unfortunately just weren't able to make it. So we're going to cover, and fortunately I was a CTE teacher also for many, many years. So I will be covering the culinary arts aspects, but I'm going to share my screen really quickly because I'm going to have each of our panelists introduce themselves once I have this PowerPoint up and ready to go. So bear with me for 1 minute while I open the slideshow. Here we go. And today what we're discussing, and if you missed the first part of the series, I'm going to just give you a really quick recap. We did why is academic integration a necessity in CTE programs, and we discussed this with industry. And industry made so many valid points that if you didn't watch the first webinar, go back. It's great. Megan has all of these. They're categorized on the ACTE website. They're open to everybody, members and non-members. It's really worth watching because we had some brilliant people on there. They spoke about what industry is looking for and how necessary it truly is that we make sure that our students have the math skills, have the literacy skills, have the skills for analytics, the problem-solving skills, which all come from academic-based integration. And what we mean by that is we know students have to learn core academics, and we as CTE educators have the opportunity to embrace and capitalize on the academics that the students are learning, in whether it's in their math class, their history class, their ELA classes, and we get to enjoy watching those students apply in the real world those academics. And industry has validated this, and now we're going to talk to some educators on why this is just so important. So I was formerly a culinary arts teacher before I went into administration. We have Scott Springer here. He formerly was a music teacher. And even though music is becoming part of CTE and audio technology at this point, Scott's also worked extensively with CTE teachers and now works for Harbor Freight Tools. So he's going to talk a little bit about the work he's doing now, but also when we get to the questions, he'll talk about how he integrated academics. Norm Testa is a former technical theater teacher. He has taught everything from sound design to lighting design, construction, welding, all of the skilled trades. And then we have Dave Thomas here, who was a former business teacher and also is a CTE administrator now. And so he's going to tell us a little bit about himself. Megan introduced me. I not only was a culinary arts teacher for many, many years, then I went on to be a CTE director. And up until June of this past year of 2021, I was a CTE director, both in Arizona as well as in Texas. And now I do consulting work for CTE, and I consult with companies that provide premier resources for our CTE students. So I have at the end of this, if anybody ever needs to get a hold of me about academic integration, because I am serving right now as the academic integration section lead for our new and related services division. So I hope anybody who is really interested in helping form the committee that we have begun, the committee already has started forming. If you would like to be part of it, on the last slide, I will share with you how to get in touch with me so you can help with this also. I'm going to turn this over. I'm going to take a breath. And Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you. If you could introduce yourself, that'd be wonderful.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Scott Springer. I'm out in Denver, Colorado. I spent 34 years at the Denver Public Schools. As Jill said, started as an instrumental music band director teacher for 13 years. Moved into administration as assistant principal of the Denver School of the Arts for many years. And then I got into career and tech ed for the last third of my career. Currently, I am an education consultant with Harbor Freight Tools for Schools. helping advance skilled trades throughout the country, welding, automotive, construction, manufacturing, that sort of thing. And I work with about 100 teachers from around the country. So today, Jill asked me, I'll talk a little bit later about how I integrated when I was a teacher in music. And I'll probably also talk about administrative and how we got academic credit in a lot of our CT classes. There were 3 or 4 different strategies we used. So that's what I'll be doing today.
Thank you, Scott. And next, because I think we're trying to go a little bit alphabetically here, Norm, can you tell us a little bit about your career?
Sure. I started off with a double master's in lighting design and sound, theatrical lighting design and sound design. Ended up touring the country with a professional theater company. Did a lot of work on different shows in Minneapolis and Dallas and Denver and all over the place. I worked on cruise ships for 3.5 years as a lighting designer and stage manager. And even there, I was working when we were in port. I was in different theaters trying to help and learn. I started teaching in '98 at Catalina Foothills High School. I created the technical theater program there. It was just called Drama. And I split that. In 2008, I became involved. Jill was my supervisor. I became involved with CTE, and my program really exploded. I was teaching three different levels in 4 years, and advanced 1 and advanced 2. I have hundreds of people that have gone on into theater or even entertainment technology, which is a much better word for it, because it allows every artistic theatrical event to count. I've recently retired after 23 years and handed my program off. And then I promptly got another job. I'm a carpenter because I don't sit still very well. Thanks.
Thank you, Norm. And Dave, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Dave Thomas from Middleton, Wisconsin, just right outside the Madison area. I've been a business teacher for 16 years in the Madison area, as well as 10 years working with the Department of Public Instruction as a state consultant as part of the career and technical education team. Recently just transitioned into a CT coordinator role, working back at the local level. A lot of connections from my experience, certainly to the accounting and finance areas, in particular with financial literacy, as well as a lot of the IT connections, computer science and beyond. So I'm happy to be here with you today. I know I've had a lot of opportunities over the years to work with our student organizations as well, and making sure that some of the projects and some of the activities that we do and some of the leadership skills really embed some of the discussion points that we'll have here today.
Great, thank you so much, Dave. So I'm going to share my screen one more time, and we're going to go to the next slide. These are the questions we're going to cover. So the first thing we're going to look at is how teachers or instructions can capitalize on the curriculum that contains academic content. And since we're going alphabetically, I'm just going to go ahead and start off with, when I taught culinary arts, all of the content that we have in culinary arts, whether it's the textbooks or today what ProStarts use, which is a turnkey type of program, contains academic materials. But just because those materials are contained within the curriculum, that doesn't mean the teacher necessarily is going to pull out those pieces and make it really evident to the students. I remember so many times when, and this was I only taught high school level, when I would have students in culinary 1 classes, the intro to culinary at that time, this was in Arizona, and they would look at me when I would say, well, you know, we're gonna bake cakes, but we're doing it for 3 times what's on that recipe card. So proportionally, we're going to use 3 times the amount of butter, 3 times the amount of sugar, 3 times the amount of so-and-so. And we've got to look at the proportions. How are we going to do this? And often the response would be, but miss, isn't that too much butter? But miss, isn't that, and they wouldn't understand until I actually put those numbers up on the board. And we're talking simple multiplication of fractions. Nothing more than multiplications of, if you're using a proportion of 2/3 of a cup of butter to 1 1/3 cups of sugar, it's always going to be that same proportion if you want to make the same product. And that's just one example. I could go into chemistry examples of whether or not you're using baking soda versus baking powder, but I always had to pull out those academic pieces of the curriculum and really make them evident for the students. And it became very apparent to me very early on that they weren't making the connection between what they had learned in academics and what we were doing in the classroom. And I knew that I needed to review those academic materials in order to make it evident so that it was something that would remain and they could become successful at whatever project that they were working on. I'm gonna let somebody else speak, but I could go on for the entire hour just about what we did in culinary arts, but that's just one really quick example of skills that I know I did in the classroom. Scott, do you have some examples that you might want to share?
Sure. So all of us on this call are current tech ed educators, and which means we're elective teachers, right? So the academic integration is so critical, and it's so easy for us to do it. If you're an English teacher, math teacher, you're mostly teaching in a silo, and for us, we can connect everything in the academic side, especially in math and literacy. And the kids, we have the advantage of the kids are in our classes because they signed up, they want to be there, they don't have to be there, and we have the hook. So we have a great way to drill in those academic concepts and make them make sense to kids. So when I was a music teacher, the two I really hit on was math concepts and writing concepts. And even down to the basic in music, fractions are huge. And when I talk to teachers in the trades now, with a lot of work I do now, is kids can't read a tape measure. Kids don't understand fractions. I mean, we're talking 5th grade fractions. So for me, making connections with, you had to know fractions in music for rhythm and time signatures and that sort of things. And we did those every day as warm-ups. We'd have, rhythm exercises. We'd have analyzing time signatures, filling in empty spots. So that was a daily routine for my students as a warm-up, along with learning things in music theory. Harmonies are many rules to writing harmonics or analyzing harmony in music. And there's a lot of analyzation that takes place in that, which is very parallel to mathematical thinking. Sound waves, if you're getting into recording. So there was just tons of connections I could make every day. And then also I was very in tune to incorporating literacy. Writing is such a big thing, literacy is so huge. And I talked about that last time we were on here, but I would have kids keep journals, and I don't care what field you're in, you can have every kid keep a journal, and you can use it for goal setting, tracking their work, just to practice of writing. Because if you can get kids writing about things they are interested in and passionate about, writing won't seem like a chore. Same with reading. So we would do journals. We would do once a quarter, they'd go attend a concert and do music reviews, 1-page, 2-page reviews. So lots of ideas like that. And finally, I think back to when I was teaching, I lost a lot of kids to AP classes and weighted credit, what we called them, because in our district, we had a 5.2 scale instead of a 4-point scale. So when I was teaching band, a kid said, I can't take your class, it's going to lower my GPA. So I did a lot of advocating for why my classes should be weighted credit all the time, all the rigor. And that was one of the best things I did in my program to attract more students, because at the end of the day, our programs are only successful as how many kids we have enrolled. We all know that. If your numbers drop and comes to budget cuts, you could be in trouble. Along with teaching AP music theory, which was already weighted, but making that argument to my administration was really helpful as a teacher. So I think I'll stop there. And if we have time at the end, I'll put on my administrative hat and talk about awarding academic credit in elective areas.
Thank you, Scott. Norm, do you have some example? Well, I know you do. Tell us some examples that I know you've, I've actually had the pleasure of working with Norm. And so many times I was in his class. Actually, I used to kind of hang out there because it was a fun place to be. But I know the amount of academic. Can you give us some examples?
Sure. Just to go back to a fairly common set of letters, I like STEAM L. So technical theater is interesting because it incorporates nearly every academic class. Science, obviously we're doing physics, we're flying things, we're swinging people across the stage, we're rigging different lights up above. The T is for technology, but I like tools instead. Safely using everyday common tools that I have a lot of kids that come back and say, you know, I had one woman come up to me at Costco and say, Mr. Testa, you got me through med school. And I said, what? And apparently in lab, something broke. And as a joke, the TA said, can anybody in here weld? And this little lady raised her hand and she had to prove it. And she got through and welded it back together. Engineering, obviously, I've got to build things. We have to have secure second stories or third stories. Nothing can move. We do a lot of drafting. Arts, obviously, we're looking at color theory and rule of thirds and everything from proportion, you know, every type of art we include, including projection and concept. Every play has a concept. Mathematics, I get the same fraction disparity. 0.5 feet isn't a thing. I keep saying that's base 10, we're base 12. And they're like, what? I go, so is that 5 inches? Anyways, the fractions was a huge problem. And I add L at the end because of literature. Every entertainment that you see, everything from stand-up comedy to national theater or Broadway, it starts off written. You've got to take a look at literature, and I like theater because it's all about your imagination. As you read a book, you get pictures in your head about what you're reading. I taught the kids how to take that image and place it on stage in front of hundreds of other people. I also think technical theater is about real life, fixing things, using power tools. One of the things that I said the most during the 23 years was solve the problem. Oh, but Mr. Testa, I don't solve the problem. And they would go about taking the steps to solve it. So I think theater is just like with the people, everything kind of comes together and then you present it to the people that are interested to see it.
Thank you so much, Norm. That's a great insight into all of the multiple tasks that it took to run such a dynamic program as I know you ran for the 23 years. Dave, talk to us some business.
Yeah, certainly from the business classroom side, and I'll include the marketing educators in that bucket as well. I think, that's always the challenging part when you look at labor market information. Whereas business and marketing, it's everywhere. It's embedded into every industry. And so from the context of the challenge that I think our teachers have from the literacy side is to really work with the students in a way that obviously you're learning some of the principles of business, but understanding the transferability extends, again, really into every industry. So sometimes we get caught up in this world of we need to teach this content and understand, again, some of the language of business perhaps, but really coming back to some of the essence of the creativity, that critical thinking, coming back to the communications and collaboration that really sometimes is that transferable skill set, whether you call it employability skills or soft skills. Those are the items that our students, again, we're expanding as far as their abilities within the context of that business and marketing education classroom experience. Certainly when I look at financial literacy, I think one of the challenges that we face and really in all the elective areas is the task is larger than any other classroom. I say that because, again, if we look at some of the math skills that students have, we recognize we're teaching an elective course. And again, we might have students in 9th through 12th grade. They come with different experiences where they're at in their academic learning. And, again, if I look at some of the work that Norm's doing and, understanding some of the geometry is absolutely essential. And again, knowing that, students may have had that 3 years ago, they might not remember a darn thing about it. Or they might be a freshman and it might be applicable at the moment. They're still trying to figure it out. Maybe you have a sophomore again that they understand it. So understanding that we as, again, from a financial or accounting background, we might have students that are in that class. I would say really challenge yourself to understand what it is that students are learning in that scope and sequence as far as the math, as well as the literacy experiences. I think it helps to provide relevance and understanding where some of the gaps might be, where you might need to differentiate some of that instruction for students, knowing that, they maybe haven't really mastered some of those literacy or mathematics skills. Likewise, when it comes to writing, I think, that's really at the heart of kind of demonstrating and showing ways that we understand information and we can communicate around that. I think if I look at my colleagues in the tech ed area or the family consumer science area, sometimes they're creating products or things that are a bit more tangible. And certainly in the world of business, sometimes we deal with a little bit more of intellectual capacity. And from that standpoint, understanding that some of the work that we do might have a little bit more of a technical writing focus. And I think that's sometimes the challenge of understanding the work that we do. And again, Scott mentioned, journaling, I think is a great, aptitude to have to understand how it connects to your learning and again, being able to write from the editorial side, but again, coming back to the world of business, again, being able to have a little bit more of that logic order, understanding that we're going to write around some of the facts. We will certainly have sometimes that place for opinion to come in, whether that's through some of the advertising and some of the persuasive speech that might fall in there. Again, job interviewing and some of the career readiness skills certainly come into persuasive. How do you present yourself in front of others? For a lot of our teachers, I think the tough part is we hear about these literacy initiatives in our school and we start feeling challenged by saying, okay, we need to do something that is outside of our box of what we do on a daily basis. I think, again, really being able to dive in and understand the work that we're doing, the level of writing that we're doing, and again, having some of those conversations about how are we asking students to understand and demonstrate that level of understanding. Is it at, I would say, a lower level of writing, or again, what are we doing to cascade that writing style up to something that might be a little bit more advanced or technical writing? I would say our students probably aren't going to love the idea of doing technical writing all day long. I think that's why our English teachers don't do it, because it's honestly probably not the most fun part of what they would do within the context of their English and literacy curriculums. But again, trying to figure out ways that we can connect some of the technical writing aptitudes to help give students an understanding of some of those skills that they might develop as they go into some of their post-secondary and career areas. So I'll kind of pause with that because I know I kind of dropped a lot into that kind of commentary and feedback. But again, I think Scott and Norm certainly had a lot of great points as well. And hopefully I'll hand it back to Jill and see where we want to go from here.
Thank you so much, Dave. And actually, what you were talking about in the literacy skills, and also our next question actually looks at, okay, so how do we do this on a daily in our daily lesson plans? How do we make sure we're integrating it every single day? And I think the technical writing piece, I'm going to actually just tell a really quick story. When I was a director in Arizona and Norm was the technical theater, of course, director and teacher extraordinaire, I had a cabinet that needed to be put together in my office. And I called Norm and I said, Norm, please send me a couple advanced students up here because I don't know how to put this cabinet together and I really need somebody. I don't have the time to do it. And I knew I could figure it out, but I figured, you know what? I want the students to be able to do it. The students come up to my office and I have the instructions right there because I read instructions. I'm not one of those people that looks at pictures. I believe in reading instructions, but I love to read. And they looked at me and they said, oh, no, we know how to do this. And I called Norm and I said, Norm, talk to your students. They don't want to read the directions. They, believe it or not, because I would not let them start with step number 1 until they sat there and read the directions. And I'm sure they went grumbling back to Norm saying, do you know that mean Dr. Annucci was up in her office? And I'm sure he heard the brunt of that. But back to when I was in the classroom and going back again to the math piece, because in culinary arts, as we all know, besides for the chemistry pieces in the advanced culinary programs, just in your introductory culinary classes, students need to know math. They need to learn how to follow directions step by step on a recipe also, but math is essential. I would bring in recipes that were European recipes and they were in the metric system. So just as daily warm-ups, just like Scott was talking about using fractions, I used to use the metric, the conversions of the English system to the metric system as almost daily warm-ups for that first year of intro to culinary. So that was just one of the little tools that I used as my warm-ups because I knew that was so essential if these students were going to go on into the world of becoming a chef. This was a skill that they were going to have to master in addition to knowing, yes, I am able to take a recipe, I am able to follow it step by step, and I'm able to convert that recipe into whatever I want to convert it to. And that's so basic for culinary because it gets so much more extensive into the history of foods and where foods came from and what different regions eat different foods and so forth. And that goes, really goes well with history, and you can work with history teachers and, have a lot of fun with your units. But I think math is a critical skill that I'm hearing from everybody is really something that needs to be almost a daily warm up in so many different CTE fields. Scott, do you have some ideas about that?
Yeah, I think you covered the math. I'll switch gears a little bit and talk about the writing, daily writing. I think is really important because a lot of all this we're talking about is just practice, right? You're giving students a chance to practice. And yes, teachers get intimidated when you say, oh, we're focusing on literacy, so you got to have them write more this year. Well, they get all worried about grading the writing, the punctuation, all that. They don't really need to get hung up with that. If the kids are practicing, they're going to get better. And all our trades classes in CTE awarded technical writing credit. And what they would do in automotive or construction or welding, they'd come in the next day and say, okay, write the steps you took yesterday towards your project. Just the step-by-step, that real technical writing piece. And again, it's something they're passionate about and what they enjoy doing. So they got that practice, and we had them do enough technical writing throughout the semester that we could actually award them that English credit at the end of the semester. So that was just a crucial daily practice, and it all comes down to doing it over and over again.
Thank you, Norm. You're muted.
Yeah, I saw that. Because I was teaching scenic design, lighting design, sound design, projection, all of the different areas of theater, integrating the subjects was required. I like the word, and this is Jill from the former colleague of ours, Alan Hager. I like the idea of visual literacy, the ability to identify and describe visual images or pictures through writing or speech. Try and describe what you see. Try and describe, you've read this passage and describe to us, either through speech or writing, the images that come into your mind. I think that is an incredibly important aspect of theater and of the learning process. I also have, obviously, a lot of science and a lot of mathematics. Science is LEDs. Everybody has LEDs now. They started off as a small little red light in a scientist's laboratory, and that's what they were used for. Now I use them to light entire stages. And math, we were talking about that. I like teaching math, but knowing that you can kind of modify some rules. It's kind of a real life lesson as well. My example to the students was, you have a 2400 watt dimmer, and it's just a normal, you get 2400 watts, and here are the different wattage of lights that you can use. You can't go over 2400. How do I get two 500 watts and two 750 watt lamps to work? And they were just, wait, what? That's 2,500. You can't do it. And I said, well, solve the problem. Sure you can. It took them a while, but then somebody realized, wait a minute, I'm going to pull those up at a percentage on the lighting board. If I only go to 96%, isn't that 2,400? Solve the problem. So I like the idea of being creative with math and creative with science. I think that leads to a greater buy-in, because we're using their imagination. They're sharing what they see and they feel, which is always influenced by all the things that they're learning. In English class, if they're reading Shakespeare, we're doing Shakespeare on stage. They get to get through iambic pentameter. Sorry, that was my reaction to iambic pentameter. They get to get through that, but then they get to see what it means visually. So I use everything I possibly can from everywhere I can to create moving pieces of art.
And Norm, that's so powerful, because meeting students where they are and visual imagery of what that student is inherently close to or passionate about, I think makes a huge difference. Because if they're passionate about something, they are going to problem solve. They're going to become more curious about something because that's their passion. That's what they're interested in. If they can relate it to something that they already know, and we've always said that we need to meet students where they are and then move them forward from there, because not all students are going to learn the same in the same amount of time, the same amount of information. We know that. And what is a buzzword for one student may not necessarily be the buzzword for another student. The other thing that I've looked at, and we're going to go into after Dave talks a little bit, the administrative view is not every teacher that we work with necessarily is on that same page. And I'm going back to my own experience when I taught culinary. My actual master's degree, and this was before a PhD, was in physiology, but I had a huge background in nutrition. So Arizona awarded me with a family and consumer degree, but I was not a classically trained chef. So I had to classically train myself on a daily basis or a weekly lesson or in my annual lesson plans to make sure that I was academically including the information. And when we got, it was really easy for me when we got to nutrition sections of culinary, because I knew I had taught anatomy and physiology at the college level. So this was something I was able personally to embrace and really delve into with the students, because it was where my knowledge base had originated. So that's the other factor when we're looking at, okay, so how are we going to help teachers across the nation integrate academics? That is a factor we're taking into consideration on the committees we're forming to help everyone, all teachers in all states, get on board with, okay, this is a need. We know it's a need. We're giving everybody the reasons, the validation for the need. So we have to look at that piece too. Sorry, Dave, you're on.
All right. Well, I'm going to say that, again, a lot of great comments. I'm going to run off a Norm's comment here a little bit about, ways that sometimes we need to look at things a little bit more visually. And again, whether it be the business and IT classrooms or marketing classrooms or any other CTE classrooms, I think we find ourselves oftentimes in that challenging spot of saying, as Scott mentioned, they ask us to do more writing or more literacy within your classrooms. Sometimes it, might get rolled out to you in a way that says, here's an article. And again, having students read the article, reflect upon the article, and there's different types of writing that can incorporate. But really understanding in the world of career and technical education that there's a lot of ways that we analyze more visual items. We process the items that we see in different ways. Jill, you mentioned some of the health parts. Again, if I was just in the doctor's office recently, and it reminded me kind of coming into this meeting today, when you're meeting with a physician's assistant or a doctor, they're looking at you, they're assessing you, they're looking for the verbal part to understand and hear, but also some of the nonverbal components, just your overall medical conditions and assessing, physically how you look. To me, those are, again, those literacy skills and reading skills that we need to focus upon. And so when we think about reading skills and other ways that we incorporate that into what we do in our career and technical education classrooms is to recognize there's different ways that we do that. Again, looking at marketing in particular, maybe it's a commercial, again, that you're going to watch a commercial and be able to understand what were the main points of the commercial, to understand the points of influence, the ways that they, again, used different graphics to communicate things. Certainly when we look at the world of being a social media influencer, hot new trending occupational area for a lot of those entry-level students out there. And again, I'm kind of, I'm probably an old guy here, but in this world of I'm not saying I'm a social media influencer, but I look at the fact of the writing skills that they're using, the ways that they're, again, looking at a product or looking at a service, really start to transcend and look at things differently. And again, thinking about ways that you can incorporate that writing into the classroom in more of a fun way. So again, understanding that maybe every student becomes a social media influencer for today, and trying to communicate, what was the value of either the project or the lesson, or again, the experience that they had in your classroom, and having some fun with engaging students in writing in different ways. I also want to kind of give a little bit of a shout out to, I saw Martha in the comments here mentioned kind of this world of problem solving. And I think the more that we can focus upon identifying a problem or challenge, and in particular, making that problem or challenge as authentic as we can, I think that really impacts the ways that students buy in to, again, some of the reading, some of the math work that they do. And again, what I mean by being more authentic and buying in, again, if it's something you present the students with a problem in your classroom, certainly has a certain level of authenticity for the students. But again, if you have a business partner or a community partner that says, here's a problem that we have in our community, we want to work with you to identify, solutions to this challenge. And obviously there's a presentation component at the end of that experience, kind of, certainly making that discussion a little bit shorter here for the sake of conversation tonight. But again, obviously, students have to understand what the problem is. They have to look at ways that they're going to solve that problem. They're going to oftentimes do some of the research and be able to communicate with different people within the community to better understand the problem and determine what solutions might be in place to do that. And again, having that ability to present that back at the end of the experience, either to the original business partner or anybody that might be from the community, school board member, principal, anybody that's willing to sit down and be a panel to listen in that authentic presentation of like, okay, here's our findings and here's what it means to us. Sometimes we get so caught up in the day-to-day of like, okay, we're teaching this lesson today, we're moving on to the next activity. Again, the more we can kind of create those sequencing of experiences, so that that learning is kind of a continuum of learning, as far as, again, working towards some of the problem solving and some of the critical thinking skills. I think again, Martha hit it on the head. Give her prompts in the commentary area tonight.
Yes, and thank you, Martha. I noticed that also. And so this kind of transitions really quickly into our last question, which it's a tough one, because we want our CTE students, of course, to, again, practice makes permanent. Scott mentioned that our students have to practice to make those skills permanent, master skills, look at certification. So when we talk about academic integration, then how do the students, and how do we make the students understand the importance of them being successful within their academic classes? Because our partners in education, of course, are core teachers. They're math teachers, they're science teachers, history teachers, and so forth. And they're the ones who are giving students this foundational information. How do we go about making our students really embrace the concept of, okay, so I know how important it is because Miss told me that if I don't know how to multiply fractions, I'm never going to be able to learn proportions. And that was something maybe I missed when I was in the 4th, 5th, or 6th grade, or whenever I was actually taught that elementary skill. How can I go back? Am I going to embarrass myself in front of my algebra teacher or my geometry teacher if Mr. Testa has told me I don't know proper angles and I need to learn these angles? What suggestions do you have for teachers that we can help students better embrace those concepts? Scott?
Sure. So tagging on what Dave was just finishing with, I think that's the way to do it, is to work with your industry partners. A lot of times the kids will listen to the people in the industry a lot more than the teacher. It's just how it is, right? And it's, even when I was a music teacher, I would take my kids to festivals and they get judged by a professional musician and they tell everything I told them. And I'm like, see, I told you guys, but they don't listen to their teachers as much as they should, right? We all know that. So having those problems from industry, I mean, we've all seen the guest speaker come in from industry and, shoot me now, get another 45-year-old adult talking to kids why it's important to write, be able to do math and write. It's sure maybe once, but having them get the problem solving, an authentic problem like Dave was talking about. When I was at the art school, we moved buildings. We moved into a new building, and our architects we worked with 2 years out challenged the students to do some designs for the new building, create. And it was so cool. They came up with the coolest ideas, and the architects actually used a few of those in the new building. So talk about like putting your learning to good use. So that's how I would emphasize it on a daily basis, is the more authentic learning that can happen. And even though we're doing a lot of authentic things in CTE, it just takes it to the next level when you get it outside the classroom.
Norm, unmute.
I actually have like 8 slides, so I want to show that. So because I am a visual learner, and I would teach literally all 7 or 8 different ways of learning in almost every day, this is going to be, I'm hoping this is going to work. Yes, okay. It doesn't want to share my screen. Sorry. Okay. Why is
Are they
Zoom?
on Google, and you can share them with me real quick, and I can share them?
No, it's on a PowerPoint, and that's what I was trying to figure out. Okay. Sorry, I've been out of it long enough. I'm not all that sad that I don't remember how to do this. That's horrible. Yeah, open system preferences. It just wants me to keep doing that. How do I?
The share.
I'm willing to jump in here if you want, and then Norm, you can work on that. I'll
Yeah,
be kind of brief about you a
you
couple
don't
minutes
mind.
here, and
Okay.
That'd be great.
yeah. So looking at those conversations again, connecting that learning with the students, I think to me it also is about building some of the bridges. And when I mean bridges within your own school, within the context of inviting some of the academic staff into your areas to see the work that's happening. I think that's easy to say that. I think it's also an opportunity when we look at whether it be an in-service day to come down and show and demonstrate some of the great work that we do within the career and technical education classrooms. I think, that's sometimes the point that we sometimes miss the opportunity for some of those academic teachers to help be our biggest advocates when they can say, here's what I know that Mr. Testa is doing down in his area, and this is why it's relevant and important. And this is, again, something that, we can connect them with industry. So I know as CTE coordinators, one of the things that I'm working on is to take staff out, and not just our CT staff, but other academic staff out to visit some of the businesses and industries to be able to see firsthand, ways that these academic skills are put into place in the technical world. And so, again, whether it's inviting a teacher from those academic areas into your space, having students go and demonstrate, perhaps taking a couple minutes as a Kickstarter in that English classroom and say, hey, can our students share, a project or something that they're working on, show and demonstrate. And again, thinking about ways that connects back to the lessons that they're learning within their academic areas and even in the math area. I think there's a lot of opportunities to, again, just build those bridges within your building. It's easy to become siloed and say math teaches math, English teaches English. We teach our own academic areas, but again, understanding that we're working towards that common good. So some of that falls underneath business partnerships, and again, thinking about ways that our academic areas can become maybe a little bit more connected to some of those business partners. I know that takes our effort as a CT team, our effort as CT coordinators to build those bridges, because again, that's not a focus area for some of our academic partners. They're focused on teaching those skills of math and English, but again, let's work with them to find the applications back to the real world.
And Dave, what was interesting is when we had our industry specialists on in January, there's even tools now that districts can purchase that actually connect you to industry virtually. And you could have a virtual speaker not only in your classroom daily, you can have videos that were done in other classrooms, and you can actually, whether it's a neurosurgeon or a chef or a construction worker or whatever. I mean, there are tens of thousands of industry people right now that are willing to come into classrooms at the drop of a hat and be a virtual speaker and even be a judge for capstone projects. So those tools are available, and the CEO of Nepris, who runs one of those types of businesses, was part of the industry. So if you watch the first chat, you'll see Shabri Raja speaking, because she can tell you about every single industry sector. She was originally an engineer and ended up going into the business of helping CTE students and teachers, actually CTE teachers, capitalize on that experience of connecting classrooms and businesses. So there's, in today's world that is so virtual, not that it still isn't better to go in person, but because we are in such a virtual world right now, it just really makes it very, very easy for those connections. Norm, were you able to share? Or
sorry, I got it. It didn't want to share it through privacy and things like that. I think I'm close.
okay. Well,
I apologize.
That's okay. What I'm gonna do though is because we're open for questions. We're getting towards the end of the time right now. I am going to put this last slide up. So if anybody who's on the webinar today would like to participate in our academic integration committee, which is part of New and Related Services Division, I have my email up on the screen. It's jillrenucci13@gmail. So if you are willing, or you can always rewatch this, so you can get this email address also. But if you are willing to serve on a committee that would be a national committee, part of New and Related Services, I would love to have more people join. And so please take down my email. But I'm going to stop sharing right now, and we would be happy for the last few minutes. We have about 7 minutes to take questions.
I think I may have gotten it. Can I try?
Yes. Oh, wow.
Bada boom. Okay, sorry about that. I don't miss it. I don't miss remote. Technical theater taught remote. Anyways, I commend you for even trying that. I've got a couple slides that, because I'm much more visual because of what I do, this is a way that I have the kids learn different places. This is Mary Zimmerman's Metamorphosis. It did down in the front, where you see kind of some rubber on the front of the stage. We did have around 1,500 gallons of water. The play requires it have water because Metamorphosis originally did as well. This is the set. You'll notice that the person in the center that's reaching out is on a platform. The students wanted a platform to move up and down. The set is actually at a 45 degrees and it's raked, which is extremely difficult to walk on. So they wanted the platforms to move. So the kids called the physics teacher in, and we created a funicular, for lack of a better word. It's a platform that remains level and goes up and down a hill. So you can see the platform that is moved down between the two platforms there. We had to calculate weight. We had to calculate friction, how we were going to pull it evenly up on each side, things like that. Color temperature. This is more science. This is from Cabaret. Lighting is interesting because it's all about mood, but it's also about math. You have a light that is a certain distance away at a certain angle at a certain intensity, and you can control the audience's emotion. This picture, and this is a controversial show, I know, and we did it really well. This is near the end, but you can see that the way it's set up, the way it's designed, you've got the rule of thirds, Fibonacci's sequence. You've got the color you're reacting to and the shapes that you're reacting to on the characters on the stage. This is from Brave New World. The person down on the ground, Sammy, created this, designed this, drafted it. The student Tomic, who was up on one of the ladders, was the person that welded it all together. So you're using a lot of different, you've got to communicate your concept, you've got to, transfer it to something hands-on, and then create it. I don't have a picture of the finished set, but I had to include this one. This is Sammy. This is what I call buy-in. She is grinding with a wire wheel styrofoam to create the set that she wants. And this is what it takes sometimes. Getting a little messy. I just really like that picture. She was making her vision, and I think that's important. Again, lighting and mood. This was from a play called The Insect Play, and being able to isolate and make audiences follow what you want is pretty critical. And this is all from literature, obviously, because these are all plays. This is from Jekyll and Hyde. This was a student design that was completely over the top. I'm sorry, I had to do that with my temples. Figuring out how to draft this, it took a village to get this show up, including the second floor and things that flew in, and creating the look for it. A second picture of that is actually slightly different angle, but the idea that somebody came up and said, here's my vision, I want to try and do this, And with the help of everybody in my department and people that came in from outside the department, we were able to, I mean, each of these pieces of wood had to be measured. All of the metal work was created. If it wasn't created, we had to go find it. Where do you, okay, I need some gear-like things. Where do you get them? And it's about solving the problem. It was a pretty amazing show. And it brought everybody together. I think that's also important, where everybody is working together to solve a problem. It's not one person. Theater can't be one person. It's a really boring show if it is. And it's in the dark. I mean, there were literally probably 50 people on the tech side that were working on this project, and all of their different skills and all of the academic information they bring with them combined to create an amazing show, this show, and hundreds of shows. Okay, thanks. I got it. I'm so proud. Now I got to get out.
Norm, thank you so much. What a wonderful way to end this webinar with some of those fantastic visions that came from Norm and his I mean, that's student work that everybody just saw. But I really want to thank our panelists. I want to thank Norm and Scott and Dave for taking the time today. I want to thank everybody who came into the webinar. Megan, do you see any other questions that we need to address right now?
Oh, Jill, I think we're good. I want to piggyback you thanking everyone for attending. I want to thank Jill for putting this whole informative webinar together. And if anyone did have specific questions, feel free to reach out to me. My information is all over ACT, and I can put you in touch with a panelist or Jill. I'll drop it in the chat as well right now. And the common question is, this recording will be posted to our website in the next few days. So thanks to everyone. And thank you again, Jill. And we hope everyone will join us for part 3.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thanks. Happy Career and Technical Education Month to everybody. Keep up the great work.
Yes.
Thank you.